Something unexpected just happened inside the Cleveland Browns organization, and it immediately sent shockwaves through the fanbase. Reports began circulating that Dillon Gabriel was suddenly out of the picture, a move that many people didn't see coming. At one point, Gabriel had been talked about as a possible future piece of the team, but almost overnight, that narrative completely flipped. Rumors quickly started spreading about what really happened behind the scenes. Some reports suggested the decision wasn't just about performance on the field. Instead, it may have involved growing tension between Gabriel and fellow quarterback Shedeur Sanders. Fans began speculating that the rivalry between the two players had become impossible to ignore. Then came another twist. When new head coach Todd Monken addressed the media, many noticed something strange. Gabriel's name barely came up at all. That silence raised even more questions. Because in the NFL, when a coach avoids mentioning a player entirely, it often signals that something major has already changed behind the scenes. Before the controversy, before the rivalry rumors, and long before the Browns made their final decision, there was a moment when everything seemed to be lining up perfectly for Dillon Gabriel. When Gabriel first arrived in Cleveland, the buzz around him was hard to ignore. Analysts, reporters, and even some fans quickly began talking about his potential as a future leader of the franchise. His college career had already built a reputation for strong passing numbers, quick decision-making, and the kind of competitive attitude coaches often look for in a quarterback. Naturally, that reputation followed him into the NFL. During the early stages of the offseason, several media voices began painting a very optimistic picture. Articles and discussions suggested Gabriel could be a perfect fit for the Browns' offensive system. Some commentators praised his ability to get the ball out quickly and manage the offense efficiently. Others believed his experience and composure could give Cleveland stability at the quarterback position. At that point, the narrative surrounding Gabriel was largely positive. He was being framed as a reliable competitor, someone who could potentially step in and guide the team forward. For fans eager to see the Browns solve their long-standing quarterback questions, that kind of optimism was easy to embrace. But while Gabriel was receiving plenty of early praise, another young quarterback was beginning to generate attention of his own, Shedeur Sanders. Sanders entered the conversation with a very different type of spotlight. Known for his playmaking ability and confidence, he had already built a reputation as an exciting talent with the potential to change games in dramatic fashion. His presence alone created a natural sense of competition inside the quarterback room. And competition at that position is never simple. In the NFL, whenever two quarterbacks are seen as possible starters, comparisons start immediately. Fans begin debating who deserves the job. Analysts start dissecting every throw and decision. Even routine practice reports can suddenly become major talking points. That's exactly what started happening in Cleveland. While Gabriel was receiving support from certain media outlets, Sanders was quietly building momentum with fans who believed his style of play brought a different kind of energy to the offense. His confidence, athletic ability, and willingness to make big plays quickly made him one of the most talked-about young players in the organization. At first, the situation looked like a typical quarterback competition. Two talented players both trying to prove they deserved the opportunity to lead the team. Competitions like that happen every year across the league. Coaches often encourage it because it pushes players to perform at their best. But sometimes those competitions evolve into something more complicated. The more attention both quarterbacks received, the more the comparisons intensified. Discussions about leadership, playing style, and long-term potential started appearing everywhere, from sports talk shows to social media debates. Suddenly, the spotlight wasn't just on individual performance anymore. It was on the growing question of who truly represented the Browns' future. And as the hype surrounding both quarterbacks continued to grow, it became clear that the situation inside Cleveland's quarterback room was turning into one of the most closely watched storylines of the season. What started as excitement about Gabriel's potential was quickly transforming into a full-blown debate, one that would eventually shape the direction of the entire team. At first, the quarterback situation in Cleveland looked like a normal competition. Two talented players battling for an opportunity. But everything changed the moment a single comment started circulating online. And suddenly, the spotlight shifted directly onto Dillon Gabriel. During an early interview, Gabriel made a remark about the difference between entertainers and competitors. On the surface, it sounded like a general statement about mentality in football, but almost immediately, fans and analysts began speculating about who the comment was actually aimed at. Many believed it was directed toward Shedeur Sanders. Sanders had already developed a reputation as one of the most confident and charismatic young quarterbacks in the game. His personality, flashy playmaking, and strong presence on social media made him incredibly popular with fans. But those same qualities also made him a target for critics who believed he focused too much on the spotlight. So when Gabriel mentioned the difference between entertainers and competitors, the timing raised eyebrows. Online discussions exploded almost instantly. Fans began dissecting the comment, debating whether it was an indirect shot at Sanders. Some people defended Gabriel, arguing that he was simply emphasizing a competitive mindset. Others felt the remark crossed a line and unnecessarily created tension between two players who were supposed to be teammates. Regardless of the intention, the damage was already done. In today's sports world, even the smallest comments can take on a life of their own once they hit social media. Clips get shared, headlines appear, and suddenly a single quote becomes a major storyline. That's exactly what happened here. Sports talk shows began discussing the possibility of a brewing rivalry inside the Browns' locker room. Fans on both sides started choosing favorites. Supporters of Sanders viewed the comment as disrespectful, especially considering Sanders had already shown flashes of leadership and playmaking ability. Meanwhile, Gabriel's supporters argued that competition is part of football and that players should be able to speak honestly about their approach to the game. But the debate didn't stop there. The media quickly began amplifying the tension. Every throw in practice, every preseason play, and every interview started being analyzed through the lens of this supposed rivalry. Instead of simply evaluating the quarterbacks on their performance, the narrative shifted toward personality clashes and locker room dynamics. And once that type of storyline takes hold, it becomes difficult to escape. Even if the players themselves never intended to create conflict, the perception of tension can still grow stronger with every passing day. Fans begin interpreting normal competitive behavior as evidence of deeper issues. Analysts start speculating about internal divisions within the team. That's how a simple comment can snowball into something much bigger. In the case of Cleveland, the entertainers versus competitors remark became one of the most talked about moments of the entire quarterback competition. Whether Gabriel meant it as a direct criticism or not, the quote helped ignite a narrative that followed both players throughout the season. And once that narrative began spreading, it added a new layer of pressure to an already intense competition. Because now, it wasn't just about who played better on the field. It was about pride, perception, and proving which quarterback truly deserved to lead the Browns. Once the early comments and speculation began circulating, the situation around the Cleveland quarterbacks quickly turned into something much bigger than a simple position battle. What started as a normal competition between Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders slowly evolved into a full-blown media storyline. And the media attention only intensified the divide. Sports outlets, talk shows, and online commentators began framing the situation as a rivalry instead of a competition. On one side were analysts who believed Gabriel's experience and style made him the safer option for the team. They argued that his ability to manage plays, distribute the ball quickly, and stay within the system made him a reliable quarterback for the Browns' offense. On the other side were those who believed Sanders represented something different entirely. Supporters of Sanders pointed to his playmaking ability, confidence, and natural leadership. They believed he brought a level of excitement and upside that could elevate the entire offense. His ability to extend plays and make difficult throws under pressure made many fans feel that he had the higher ceiling as a franchise quarterback. As these two narratives spread, the fanbase started to split. Some fans strongly backed Gabriel, believing he had been unfairly criticized and deserved more time to prove himself. They argued that the media hype around Sanders was premature and that experience should matter when choosing a starting quarterback. Meanwhile, Sanders' supporters felt the opposite. They believed the media had been overly generous toward Gabriel while overlooking Sanders' actual performances. Every strong play Sanders made seemed to reinforce their argument that he was the future of the franchise. Social media quickly became the battleground for these debates. Every throw during practice, every preseason drive, and every interview clip was analyzed in extreme detail. Fans posted highlight clips, compared statistics, and argued endlessly about which quarterback truly deserved the starting job. Even small moments began fueling the narrative. A solid throw by Gabriel might trigger discussions about his composure and decision-making. A flashy play by Sanders would ignite conversations about his superstar potential. Each moment was interpreted through the lens of the growing rivalry. But the more the conversation grew, the more the narrative began shaping how people viewed the players. Instead of evaluating them independently, fans and analysts started comparing everything they did. One player's success was framed as evidence against the other. The quarterback room had effectively become a two-sided debate. And once the media begins telling that kind of story, it can take on a life of its own. Headlines become sharper, opinions become stronger, neutral discussions gradually turn into passionate arguments. The rivalry becomes the focus instead of the football itself. For the Browns organization, that kind of attention can create additional pressure. Quarterback decisions are already among the most scrutinized choices any team makes. When the fan base is divided and the media is amplifying the debate, every decision becomes even more complicated. But what many people didn't realize at the time was that the biggest shift in this story hadn't happened yet. Because once the games actually started, the conversation that had been built through speculation and media narratives was about to collide with something much harder to ignore: real performances on the field. For weeks, the debate surrounding the Cleveland quarterback situation was fueled mostly by opinions, speculation, and media narratives. Fans argued about potential, analysts compared playing styles, and the rivalry between Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders continued dominating headlines. But once the games actually started, something important happened. The conversation shifted from speculation to reality. Because in the NFL, nothing speaks louder than performance on the field. Early on, many people expected Gabriel to live up to the hype that had surrounded him during the offseason. Several media voices had described him as a reliable quarterback who could run the offense efficiently and keep the team competitive. Supporters believed his experience and composure would allow him to take control of the Browns' offense quickly. But once the real games began, things didn't unfold exactly the way many expected. There were moments where Gabriel showed flashes of potential accurate throws, quick decision-making, and solid drives that hinted at what he might be capable of. However, consistency quickly became a concern. Some drives stalled at critical moments, and the explosive plays that fans were hoping for didn't always appear when the team needed them most. Meanwhile, something interesting was happening on the other side of the quarterback competition. Whenever Shedeur Sanders stepped onto the field, the energy around the team seemed to change. Sanders brought a different style of play, one that emphasized creativity, confidence, and the ability to make big plays under pressure. Instead of simply managing the offense, Sanders often looked to create opportunities. There were drives where he extended plays with his mobility, escaped collapsing pockets, and delivered throws that energized both the team and the crowd. Those moments quickly caught the attention of fans and analysts who had been following the quarterback competition closely. And the more those plays happened, the more the narrative began to shift. Suddenly, the same fan base that had been divided during the offseason started seeing something tangible. Instead of arguing about potential, they were now watching two very different styles of quarterback play unfold in real time. For many fans, Sanders' performances began to stand out. His willingness to take chances, his confidence in high-pressure situations, and his ability to generate momentum during crucial drives created the type of excitement teams often look for in a starting quarterback. That didn't mean Gabriel lacked talent. But as the season progressed, the contrast between the two quarterbacks became harder to ignore. While Gabriel struggled to fully separate himself from the competition, Sanders continued showing flashes that suggested he could handle the responsibility of leading the offense. Each strong drive, each clutch throw, and each comeback moment added to the growing belief that Sanders might be the quarterback the Browns had been searching for. And in the NFL, momentum matters. Once fans, teammates, and coaches begin believing in a quarterback's ability to lead, the entire dynamic of a competition can change quickly. That's exactly what appeared to be happening in Cleveland. The debates that had once been driven by media opinions were now being shaped by actual performances on the field. The quarterback battle wasn't theoretical anymore, it was unfolding in front of everyone watching. And as those performances continued, it became increasingly clear that the story of the Browns' quarterback situation was entering a completely new chapter. Just when the quarterback debate in Cleveland was starting to settle around on-field performances, another layer of drama suddenly pushed the situation into an entirely different direction. And this time, it wasn't happening during a game or at practice. It was happening online. Rumors began circulating across social media after posts allegedly connected to the fiancé of Dillon Gabriel started criticizing Shedeur Sanders. Screenshots quickly spread across platforms, and fans began debating whether the comments were direct shots at Sanders' character and ability. Now, to be clear, many of these claims were based on online speculation. But in today's sports world, even unconfirmed posts can ignite massive reactions once they begin trending. And that's exactly what happened. Within hours, the situation exploded into one of the most talked about topics among Browns fans. Supporters of Sanders saw the posts as disrespectful and unnecessary, especially considering both quarterbacks were supposed to be competing professionally while still representing the same team. Others argued that personal opinions expressed online shouldn't automatically be tied to the player himself, but even those voices acknowledged that the timing of the controversy couldn't have been worse. Because at that moment, the Browns were already dealing with a heated quarterback competition. And when personal drama enters a locker room battle, things can become complicated very quickly. Reports began suggesting that the situation had created an awkward atmosphere around the team. Even if the players themselves weren't directly involved in the online exchange, the public nature of the controversy made it difficult to ignore. Fans began asking questions. Was this just social media noise, or was it a sign that the rivalry between Gabriel and Sanders had grown deeper than anyone realized? The speculation only intensified when observers noticed that Gabriel didn't publicly address the situation. There were no clear attempts to calm the narrative or shut down the online back and forth. In professional sports, silence can sometimes speak just as loudly as a response. For some fans, that silence suggested that the tension between the two camps might have been real. Others believed the entire situation had simply been blown out of proportion by the internet. But regardless of the truth behind the posts, the controversy added yet another layer of pressure to an already intense quarterback competition. Because teams at the professional level value more than just talent. They value chemistry. Coaches want players who can work together, avoid unnecessary distractions, and maintain focus on the field. When off-field drama begins overshadowing the football itself, organizations often step in to restore stability. And according to reports circulating at the time, the Browns' leadership had taken notice of the growing noise surrounding the situation. What had started as a simple competition between two quarterbacks had now turned into a storyline involving media narratives, fan debates, and social media controversy. The spotlight on the quarterback room had never been brighter. But what most fans didn't realize yet was that a major change within the Browns organization was about to shift the entire direction of this story. Because while the online debates were raging, a new voice was preparing to take control of the team's future, and his decision would ultimately reshape the entire quarterback situation in Cleveland. Just when the situation around the Browns' quarterback room seemed chaotic, a major shift happened inside the organization. A new voice entered the building, and almost immediately the direction of the team began to change. That voice belonged to Todd Monken. Whenever a new head coach takes over an NFL team, one of the first things they evaluate is the quarterback position. After all, the entire identity of an offense usually revolves around that one player. So when Monken stepped into Cleveland, it was widely expected that he would closely examine the competition between Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. But what happened next caught many people off guard. During Monken's early press conferences, reporters waited to hear his thoughts about the quarterbacks on the roster. Naturally, they expected him to mention Gabriel, who had received a lot of attention earlier in the offseason. Instead, something strange happened. Monken barely mentioned Gabriel at all. In the world of professional sports, those small details can speak volumes. Coaches are usually careful with their words, especially when discussing players who are competing for major roles. When a coach avoids highlighting a particular player, analysts often interpret it as a signal that the organization may be moving in a different direction. And that's exactly how many observers read the situation. At the same time, Monken began speaking more openly about the qualities he wanted in a quarterback. He emphasized leadership, decision-making, and the ability to create plays under pressure. He talked about building an offense that could adapt, attack defenses, and keep opponents guessing. Those descriptions immediately caught the attention of fans who had been following the quarterback battle, because many of those traits seemed to align with Sanders' playing style. Throughout the offseason and early games, Sanders had already shown flashes of creativity and confidence. His ability to extend plays, make difficult throws, and maintain composure during high-pressure situations had started turning heads within the organization. As Monken evaluated the roster, those qualities reportedly stood out. Coaches often look beyond statistics when deciding who should lead an offense. They watch how players respond in difficult moments, how they communicate with teammates, and how they handle the pressure of leading a team. By many accounts, Sanders was checking those boxes. Meanwhile, the distractions surrounding Gabriel, both the on-field struggles and the off-field controversies, had started to complicate his position within the team. For a new head coach trying to establish discipline and unity, minimizing distractions becomes a priority. Building a strong locker room culture often requires making difficult decisions about which players best fit the team's vision moving forward. That's why Monken's quiet approach during those early press conferences was so telling. He wasn't creating drama, he wasn't publicly criticizing anyone. Instead, he simply focused on the direction he wanted the Browns to take. And slowly, it became clear that direction might not include Gabriel. Behind the scenes, reports suggested the coaching staff was evaluating how the quarterback room would function under the new system. They were studying film, analyzing performances, and determining which player gave the team the best chance to move forward. By the time the organization began hinting at a decision, many fans had already started connecting the dots. The arrival of Todd Monken hadn't just brought a new coach to Cleveland. It had changed the entire trajectory of the Browns' quarterback situation. Eventually, all the speculation, debates, and controversies surrounding the Browns' quarterback situation reached a breaking point. The organization had been evaluating the competition for weeks, and the pressure from fans, media narratives, and on-field performances continued building. Then the decision finally arrived. The Browns officially moved on from Dillon Gabriel. For many observers, the move didn't come as a complete surprise. By that point, the signs had already been there. The inconsistent performances, the growing off-field controversy, and the shifting tone from the coaching staff had all hinted that the team might be preparing to move in a different direction. But even with those signals, the final decision still carried significant weight. Quarterback changes are never small moves in the NFL. They shape the identity of a team, influence locker room chemistry, and determine how an offense will function moving forward. When the Browns chose to move on from Gabriel, it wasn't just about one player leaving the roster. It was about committing to a new leader. That leader turned out to be Shedeur Sanders. After weeks of competition and evaluation, the Browns made it clear that Sanders would step into the spotlight as the team's starting quarterback. The announcement immediately sparked reactions across the football world. Fans who had supported Sanders from the beginning celebrated the decision. They believed his confidence, playmaking ability, and leadership potential made him the ideal quarterback to guide the team forward. For them, the move confirmed what they had been arguing all along, that Sanders possessed the talent and energy the Browns needed. Others viewed the decision as a bold gamble. Sanders was still a young quarterback with plenty left to prove at the professional level. Handing him the starting role meant placing significant trust in his development and ability to handle the pressure that comes with leading an NFL franchise. But the coaching staff appeared confident in their choice. Head coach Todd Monken reportedly saw something in Sanders that convinced him the young quarterback was ready for the challenge. During discussions about the team's direction, Monken emphasized Sanders' ability to create plays, read defenses, and maintain composure under pressure. In fact, one phrase quickly began circulating among fans and analysts alike. Monken reportedly described Sanders as an elite playmaker. Those words carried serious meaning. Coaches don't use that kind of language lightly, especially when talking about a quarterback who is about to lead the offense. The description suggested that Monken didn't just view Sanders as a temporary option. He believed Sanders had the potential to become the centerpiece of the Browns' offensive system. For Sanders, the opportunity represented the biggest moment of his career so far. Every quarterback dreams of earning the chance to lead an NFL team, but with that opportunity comes enormous pressure. Expectations rise instantly. Every decision, every throw, and every result is scrutinized by fans and analysts. Yet those who had followed Sanders closely believed he was ready for the moment. Throughout the competition, he had shown flashes of confidence, resilience, and playmaking ability. Those qualities helped convince the organization that he could handle the responsibility of leading the team. Meanwhile, Gabriel's time in Cleveland came to a quiet end. What once looked like a promising opportunity had gradually unraveled through a combination of performance issues, controversies, and shifting organizational priorities. In the end, the Browns made their choice. The quarterback competition was over, the controversy was behind them, and the franchise had officially placed its future in the hands of Shedeur Sanders. Looking back at everything that unfolded, the quarterback battle inside Cleveland became far more than just a competition for a starting job. What began as a routine preseason battle slowly evolved into one of the most talked-about storylines surrounding the franchise. At the center of it all were two players with very different paths and expectations, Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. In the early days, many believed Gabriel had the inside track. He arrived with media support, strong college credentials, and the reputation of a quarterback who could run an offense efficiently. Analysts discussed his leadership, his composure, and his ability to keep plays organized under pressure. For a while, it seemed entirely possible that he could become the Browns' next long-term answer at quarterback. But football seasons rarely follow the scripts people expect. As the weeks passed, the narrative surrounding the team began to shift. The comments, the media debates, and the growing rivalry storyline created an environment where every performance carried extra meaning. Every throw, every decision, and every drive was suddenly part of a much larger conversation about who truly deserved to lead the franchise. That pressure changed the dynamic of the competition. While Gabriel struggled to maintain the early momentum that had surrounded him, Sanders steadily built his case through flashes of playmaking ability and leadership. Fans began noticing the difference in energy when he stepped onto the field. His confidence, creativity, and willingness to take control of key moments quickly made him one of the most intriguing young quarterbacks on the roster. At the same time, the off-field discussions and media narratives only amplified the stakes. What might have remained a quiet quarterback competition instead became a storyline followed closely by fans, analysts, and sports commentators across the league. Debates about leadership, personality, and long-term potential dominated conversations about the Browns' future. Eventually, the organization had to make a decision. When the Browns moved on from Gabriel and placed their trust in Sanders, it marked the end of a chapter that had been building for months. The choice represented more than just a roster move, it signaled a shift in the direction of the team. With Sanders stepping into the starting role, the Browns made it clear that they were ready to build their offense around his strengths. His ability to extend plays, make dynamic throws, and lead under pressure became the foundation of the team's vision moving forward. For Gabriel, the outcome serves as a reminder of how quickly things can change in professional football. Opportunities in the NFL are never guaranteed, and sometimes a combination of performance, perception, and timing can dramatically alter a player's path. But for Sanders, the story is only beginning. Now that he has the starting job, the expectations will be higher than ever. Every game will be another chance to prove that the Browns made the right decision and that the faith placed in him was justified. And that's what makes this rivalry so fascinating in hindsight. What started as a debate between two quarterbacks ultimately reshaped the future of the Browns, turning a preseason competition into a defining moment for the franchise's next chapter.